When teaching notions of spirituality, the challenge is how to avoid the subject seeming abstract and divorced from the pupil's own life experience. Beth Stockley, RE consultant for Brent, has devised a new scheme of work for the borough, which aims to make the teaching of RE more relevant to pupils' lives. Within this scheme, she's worked with Hindu experts to develop more open units on Hinduism. She's asked Laura Morris, a local RE teacher, to trial and give feedback on the Year 9 lesson on Hindu pluralism.
We tend to start off with Hindus in Britain as the first topic. Students have to interview anyone from any religious tradition who has moved from one country to another and their experiences of change and transition. And a lot of people are interviewing members of their family. But then we do move on to aspects of God and the Trimurti. And then suddenly you're jumping from the very personal to something that seems quite abstract. I think perhaps still keeping that Hindus in Britain lesson somewhere in the scheme of work or even at the beginning, but then moving on to this keeps that personal connection.
We will see aspects of the lesson, including how they use video clips from a programme about Hindu spiritual pathways, and hear Beth and Laura assess the lesson's effectiveness. Laura kicks the lesson off with an intriguing starter to get pupils focusing on their own approaches to life.
I'm going to be doing a quiz, a kind of questionnaire with you. And it's all about the way that you learn, the way that you are as a person. What are you normally distracted by? Is it A, clutter and what you see around you? Is it B, the noise? Is it C, you find it distracting because you find it hard to sit still? If you pick A, I'd like you to go to the pink corner of the room.
I wonder what you felt about the starter, having that as the starter as opposed to an activity later on.
Well, you picked out from the Brent syllabus that the main objective was that they needed to learn different ways in which Hindus understand and approach God, or the ultimate reality. And I thought the way we approached that by getting them to think first of all about how they approach life or how they approach learning was a really useful first step into looking at how Hindus then approach God.
I liked it as a starter. I thought it was good, one, because of the mystery element of, what's this all about? And two, as you said, that it brings them in from the personal. And so then they're probably thinking, even if it's subconsciously, of an analogy with the learning styles.
Does anyone want to guess what A was about? Yeah.
Visual learning.
Visual, brilliant. People who are predominantly visual, can you just lift up all your strips of paper, please? OK, what's this got to do with Hinduism? Well, during the lesson, I'm hoping that you'll work this out. Think for a minute everything you think about when you hear the words Hindu or Hinduism. In this school, we have a lot of Hindu students, but I think it'd be really useful in schools where there aren't many Hindu students just to give a context to what we're about to go on to discuss. It could bring up some ideas they have about Hindu views on God, and then if they come up with stereotypes or misconceptions, the rest of the lesson will challenge that. Any feedback on that? Some keywords?
They have loads of gods and goddesses, but there's only one true God, which they all form from.
How do you think Hindus approach God?
The way they pray and hang pictures on the wall, like showing a lot of respect to them.
Excellent, thank you.
Go to a temple.
Their idea of Hindu spirituality is very temple, puja orientated, as opposed to exactly the other pathways.
Yeah.
So I think that showed also how important this kind of lesson was for redressing that balance.
What or who do Hindus say that God is?
Isn't the one true God called like Brahman or something? And then all the other gods are parts of his like personality or parts of him.
Let's see with your ideas whether they match up with this video we've got. Some Hindu students talking about their own views on what Hinduism is and what God is in Hinduism.
To be honest, I don't really know what God is to me because I haven't experienced God for myself. So I don't know whether he exists or what is he, how do
That first bit of the video when they're talking about what is God and it isn't something concrete and formalised was really useful because many of the students probably feel like that. They don't have a clear-cut definition.
Whereas in a textbook it tends to be very categorical, this is what X believes.
Whereas starting off with this lesson shows that you can't approach this religion in that way. Every Hindu says or every Hindu believes.
You gave me your feedback of what you thought Hindus said about God. Now on the programme we have 4 people who are Hindu saying what they think about God. How does that compare?
Someone said that they try to see the God in everyone. That's like kind of related to like
each god representing a side of Brahman. Because,
Yeah, excellent.
I seem unsure, but I don't understand that, because if they're following this religion, then surely they should be like, obviously, focusing on its beliefs, and then they would be their beliefs, but they don't seem to have those. They seem to like their religion in the sense that it's the festivals and everything.
I don't agree with Helen, because, you see, she said they seem like they're doing it for the festivals and things. I don't think it's because of that. I think it's because everybody sees things in different ways.
Are you speaking as someone who agrees or believes in similar things?
What, with them on the TV? The girl in the red thing, and she was like, I believe there's something out there, but maybe not a little man who's up.
Helen, do you want to come back before I go to you two at the back?
The fact that people can interpret it in different ways and be unsure of God is like, it's not that it's unclear, it's that it's got kind of many different aspects, and it's like many...
I'm going to introduce a word to give you the language here to help explain this, because I know you're not trying to say something negative about Hinduism, many Hindu friends, and you're trying to say that there's this pluralism, this many ways of being a Hindu, if you like. In fact, there's 4 distinct paths that Hindus follow.
The girl who was picking up on the message of, but shouldn't religious people just follow their religion absolutely? Shouldn't they believe exactly what it says? So really getting a sense from the first part of the programme that actually things are not as clear-cut as that. The experience within a tradition is a bit different.
Rather than hiding that away and trying to gloss over the differences and just look at the similarities, having those 4 Hindu students talk about their faith and talk about the reality that they don't necessarily know what God is, or they have very different views, really sparked off discussion, didn't it?
Which path, in your opinion, is the best to follow?
I like the Bhakti Marg for one reason.
I thought it took them beyond stereotype view of Hinduism to actually leading them into an understanding of these different ways and of the pluralism.
And 2 students put their hands up halfway through the video and said, I think I know why we did that activity at the beginning. This is better that way than saying, now we've learned about Hinduism. I'm going to give you one of these in pairs. Just watch the section first, and then together you'll fill out a particular column on this sheet. So what is this pathway about? Why does the particular person that was interviewed like this path? And what do you think of this path? They were useful questions, and they could get all the information they needed from the video, but the final box, and what do you think about this path? Perhaps we could omit and use that just later in the discussion, because we probably didn't give them that long to evaluate at that stage.
And that's interesting though, but I suppose it's from different places in the room, because I noticed that quite a few of them that I could see were actually talking about that box quite a bit when they were filling it in.
This is where you've got differentiation by outcome, haven't you? It gives people the opportunity, if they have finished, to be doing something and to be really talking about their own personal views. Those 4 people clearly believe Hinduism is a religion that accepts many other approaches to God and also accepts other faiths. What might someone's way, who's a Hindu, who wants to follow the Bhakti way, what might be their way of trying to reach God? What would they do?
They would have to be emotionally devoted to that path.
What about Yana?
He said that he read scripts from the prophets.
So rather than praying and chanting, the reading would be essential. If you had to draw a symbol to sum up the Yana path, what would it be?
A book.
Clarifying the 4 pathways on the whiteboard with the symbols. Asking them, how does this connect with the Learning Styles activity? And then how does this relate to your own experience and to other traditions? It really seemed to draw a lot out.
Yeah. At the beginning of the lesson, you collected these bits of paper. Why?
Because I think it was to show that we have different, just like how we have different ways of learning. It's the same as how Hindus interpret the religion in different ways.
Sums up this pluralist flavour of Hinduism, doesn't it? Knowing who you are, what is your best approach to God, life, finding meaning? Yeah.
I kind of thought that Raji would be the best, because
best for you?
Yeah, because I kind of feel like I get stressed sometimes, and I think I need to take a step back and just relax a bit.
I didn't want students to think, as Miss saying, I've got to think as a Hindu. So there's too much of try and get yourself in the eyes of the believer, which is quite hard to do.
more to the point, just what are you like as a person, what's your most natural orientation, but use the language of the Hindu spiritual traditions.
And that's what we want, is also their personal responses, their personal engagement and evaluation.
It makes it some kind of spiritual learning for them, in a sense, as well as just learning about Hindu spirituality, because they're reflecting and they're doing personal reflection. I could have ended on the plenary of how does this link in with your starter activity on learning styles, but it seemed to be there was so much more to talk about. When I'd walked around the classroom, one of the students had mentioned, "Miss, I'm a Muslim and I believe..." He not only mentioned jnana actually, but he'd also mentioned the karma path, and he said, I think both of these fit in with my own faith. So I was like, okay, let's talk about that.
Even though there is the Quran, we have to interpret it in different ways sometimes. So, like, I interpret it in a way of peace.
For you, it's about finding the right interpretation of your holy book. Last two people.
I think that both Karma and Raja are like, they sort of have similarities to Buddhism. Because in Raja, it's all about releasing everything and clearing your mind. It's all about enlightenment. And in the Karma, you have the obvious actions have consequences.
In Christianity, like, you're always like helping other people that are in need and stuff. So here in the Karma Yoga, you have to like do some like charity work, and it's like helping other people helps you, sort of thing.
And the fact that other students in the plenary, in the summing up, could relate that to religious backgrounds that they were familiar with was really interesting. Oh, that, you know, the Raja path is like Buddhism, but actually Hinduism's first in origin, in history, and it's useful for them to know, and that's not something that's borrowed from Buddhism. And we talk about that in a future lesson. This is clearly a spiritual approach that's been in the tradition for a long time.
As we've seen, even if you're religious or not religious, these different paths that are within Hinduism give you a different way of approaching the world, depending on your character, your natural talents, and the way that you orientate yourself to the world. And we've seen that these paths happen to occur in other religions too. Now, your homework, similar to what we did at the beginning of the lesson with the learning styles, is to make up a questionnaire to help someone work out what kind of person are they. A typical question might be, if you were in a library, would you, what would Jana's person be like? Read for hours. I liked the homework tasks. I thought it was really creative. And they could think about some ideas and really work out that they've understood what these paths are about. So as regards learning outcomes, I think that's probably only level 5 work though, describing and perhaps interpreting. We'd need to add a question, wouldn't we, in a future assessment or in a test that allows them to reach level 6 and is perhaps a bit more dry but analytical written piece of work. And if you'd like to pack away your stuff?
We could change the scheme of work quite easily to fit this in, but then we'd need to change future lessons so that this theme of the 4 paths carries on through. What would be the Karma approach to Dharma? You wouldn't be saying, what is the Hindu approach? You'd be being a bit more specific.
It's much more authentic in terms of a recognition of what Hinduism is, both in India and here in Britain. So as a platform, and as a really good core of learning at the beginning, I think it's very powerful.
Beth Stockley's scheme of work is available on the Teachers TV website, as is the classroom resource programme Hindu Spiritual Pathways, which you can download.